is a dream come true! I'm driving and comparing every Corvette generation from C1 to C8. I'll tell you what each Vette is like to pilot on this beautiful canyon road, and then reveal what I think is overall the best Corvette ever made. Hey there, I'm Brad, Corvette owner and enthusiast, and I'm thrilled to bring you over 70 years of Corvette history. I searched far and wide to gather these 8 Corvettes, all privately owned. To make this a fair comparison, all of these cars are basically stock without any major modifications. And under hood, each example has essentially the standard engine of their respective years. No big blocks or ZR1s or Z06s allowed this time. These Corvettes also have stock exhaust systems, which I made sure to record before each driving review for your listening pleasure. While I previously owned a C4, a C6, and currently own this C5, I have never driven any of the first 3 Corvette generations until today. So let's meet our first car, the C1.
I want a Corvette.
I thought you would.
Introduced in 1953 to capture the flavor of European sports cars, the first-year Corvette was honestly more of a rushed styling exercise than a proper car. It was unquestionably beautiful, with a curvaceous convertible shape brought to life in fiberglass, a lightweight exotic material for the time. But this Corvette lacked roll-up windows, exterior door handles, or any real performance. A tepid 6-cylinder engine squeaked out 150 gross measured horsepower, which is actually more like 120 if measured by modern, more accurate net standards. Paired only with a 2-speed automatic, the 1953 Corvette ambled from 0 to 60 miles per hour in a leisurely 11 seconds. It sold like cold cakes. But the Corvette was off to the races, both literally and figuratively. A V8 engine and manual transmission became available, and a bold new body debuted in 1956. Today's C1 example hails from the 1960 model year, and it's been in owner Adam's family since 1968. His car is equipped with the optional factory hardtop, and it's stock with the exception of aftermarket Krager wheels and a Mr. Gasket shifter attached to an optional 4-speed manual. The engine is the standard 283 cubic inch V8, good for 230 gross measured horsepower, which works out to around 185 net measured horses. Let's fire it up and see how it sounds and goes. Oh man, what a blast from the past. For someone from my generation, there's so much about this car that feels so alien. This is one of the oldest cars I've ever driven. And from the moment that you sit in the car, it's bizarre. You have this gigantic steering wheel that is all up in your business. C1s do not have power steering. So you need that nice big wheel to really get a firm leverage on it to be able to turn it. But it definitely takes some muscle, as does the clutch. And no power brakes, no air conditioning, of course, but you do get this neat little cowl vent that pops open and delivers some air, and the air conditions you from the outside. Okay, let's see how that goes. This is first gear. It's coming. Oh, come on, baby. Yeah. Oh, man. You have to keep in mind the era that this car was made pretty fast. I think 0 to 60 is somewhere around 8 seconds. In the 1950s, sports cars didn't really exist yet, at least not in America. You had basically a handful of Studebakers. You had, that's my first car. You had the Thunderbird, more like grand touring cars than a proper sports car. How does it drive on a canyon road? It's a little stressful, I'm not gonna lie. I have a very difficult time sensing what the front wheels are up to. Oh my goodness gracious. The cornering though is amazingly flat. The other thing that's wild about this car compared to other Corvettes is how high you sit up. Pretty much at the same height of a normal car, but it makes for great visibility. The view out of this hood is magnificent. There are so many details throughout the car. I love seeing the exhaust poking out of the rear bumper. Also, the interior is just beautiful. This is back in the day where they did not care too much about safety. It was just make the insides look great. Hard metals, hard surfaces. I guess if you got in a wreck, they just, hose it out for the next guy. The styling on this car is phenomenal. In my opinion, the best looking C1s are the ones like this one, where the cove, which is that side scallop, has a different color than the rest of the car. So this white on red look is just superb. It gets so much attention. I'm used to having with my C4, C5, C6 some attention. Nothing like this. It is a rolling carnival. Or let's turn it around right here. Come on. Hey. Oh man, get that steering wheel. Oh, whew. Okay, we are off again. What's interesting about the C1 is that old timers out there will call him the solid axle Corvette. And that is because it's the only Corvette that has a live solid rear axle. All the ones after this had independent. So before they started using C and numbers to describe each generation of Corvette, that kind of started in like the 90s, around the C5. This was the solid axle Corvette. Now, what's really amazing about this example, it's very well sorted, but this was not a show queen. This car has been driven. It currently has about 99,000 miles on the odometer, but it's rolled over once, so it's probably around 200,000 miles. The current owner, his father bought it in 1968, and he just drove it to work every day for 15 years without any air conditioning, no power steering, no power brakes. I mean, you guys need any more proof that we have gotten soft as a society? There you go. Okay, you got a really tight corner. You really got to haul in the brakes with some muscle, and then you feed that steering over. Okay, I'm starting to get a little bit of a feel on this car. I think by the time I'm done, I'll have some sort of simpatico with it. The great thing about a classic car like this, it forces you to be present in every moment. Nothing about it is easy, but that's kind of part of the charm. I am so thankful to be driving this thing, and now I'm very curious what the C2 is like.
The completely new Corvette Stingray for 1963.
True innovation arrived with the C2. As touted in the brochure, the C2 was the first Corvette to offer a fully independent suspension and four-wheel disc brakes, quite advanced for its day. The options list exploded into a dizzying amount of comfort, performance, and engine choices in ever-increasing displacements, and a new coupe model joined the ragtop. Today's C2 comes to us via owner Richard, who's had this 1966 convertible since the early 90s. By 1966, the standard V8 had swelled to 327 cubic inches, delivering 300 gross horsepower, or more accurately, around 240 net. As you can see from the window sticker, this C2 is fully loaded with comfort and convenience options that inflated the base price by 50%. Those options included the 2-speed Powerglide automatic, power steering, power brakes, leather seats, and even headrests, making this car quite luxurious for its time. And I can't wait to see how it drives today. Okay, look at me guys, I'm driving a C2 Corvette. This is absolutely one of those cars that's a dream car drive for me. It is immediately easier to drive than the C1. Power brakes, big improvement, four-wheel disc brakes starting in 1965 for Corvettes. It feels a lot more confidence-inspiring. All right, we got a tight corner coming up here. Let's see how she handles. Yeah, you definitely tell the tires are narrow. They like to howl pretty early, but the suspension itself is very nice. Having that independent rear suspension really helps with bumps, especially in mid-corner. And the car doesn't feel that big. It has a nice nimble feel to it. While the C1 was surprisingly good at handling, this is clearly a step up. The steering, while it doesn't have as much effort as what the C1 had, is still not very precise. I'm definitely doing a lot of corrections, and while the ratio is faster, it still has a lot of that old American car wander to it. This is one of the years of the C2 where you had a teak wood steering wheel There's something about grasping a wooden wheel that is just so satisfying. So the interior has a much more muted look to it. It's not quite as dazzling as the C1, but it is much more functional. And the 4 most important gauges are right up front. It makes it really easy to glance at and see when you're driving. I'm gonna do a little bit of acceleration here, so I'm gonna slow down, and here we're gonna put flat out. Yep, come on, there we go, giddy up. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Okay. 0 to 60 miles per hour, according to Road and Track at the time for a car just like this, was about 8 seconds. So about as fast as the C1 I drove. But remember, that one was a 4-speed manual. This one is a 2-speed automatic. I'm a stick shift guy, so I'm always gonna prefer the manual, but I have to say the automatic, with this much torque, it isn't as bad as I would think it would be. Let's turn around and go back. Back we go. But yeah, I'm driving at a pretty reasonable clip now. With the C1 Corvette, the speed limit was very much that, a speed limit. You did not want to even go near it. This car, speed limit feels about right. I can definitely drive about, I don't know, 10, 15 miles per hour faster without much fear. We're going down the mountain now, and I'm not really noticing any brake fade thanks to those 4-wheel disc brakes, which do a lot better job of dissipating heat. That's something the Corvette racing team figured out pretty quickly. Drum brakes were losing them lots of races because so many racing drivers would end up without any brakes near the end of these races. Disc brakes, though, were a big step up. It has all the technology that you would want for a performance car of the era to compete with cars like Jaguar, Mercedes, even Aston Martin. The C2 was the first Corvette that I consider to be a world-beating car. The majority of these cars were convertibles. Even though it got rid of the C1's proper trunk, there is still a decent amount of space behind the seats here. You just have to kind of move the top up to get full access to it. But that was what they sacrificed for styling. Man, for my eyes, this might be the most beautiful American car ever made. The C2 essentially set the template for what all Corvettes would look like pretty much up until like the C8. That pointy, long-nosed look and a short deck. Another staple of the Corvette were the pop-up headlights. Hidden headlights became an iconography of the Corvette, starting with the C2, and that lasted all the way to 2004 and the end of the C5. So this car really set the template of the Corvette, what it was gonna be. The front mid-engine V8 for better cornering and better weight distribution. Sitting a lot lower in the car versus sitting higher like the C1. The C1 was really good for this kind of arm out the window. This is getting a little bit harder. I'm getting more of that cocoon feeling that I'm more used to with Corvettes. Okay, got another turn right here. Dab of brakes and feed her over. Come on. Yeah. And you can just smell the unburned gasoline. This makes me nostalgic for an era I wasn't even alive for. This is how cars should be. Such a vast leap forward from the C1, which was already a pretty dang fun car. It's also very comfortable. The seats are very comfortable, even with these headrests. This has lots of great options to it. Power windows, look at this. Pretty quick too. We even have air conditioning. I mean, man, this is a car you could drive through Route 66. Now, a lot of people look at the C3 as the car which really changed the Corvette from a hardcore sports car to a luxury car. But really the C2 is the beginning of that marriage between comfort and luxury and speed and performance that was, in my opinion, the key to its success throughout the rest of time. Anyone can jump in this thing and immediately feel at home, even though it's 60 years old. It is very comfortable, very fun to drive. It's great. The C2 is great. This is definitely a dream car that did not disappoint. I'm very, very curious to see how the C3 can possibly improve upon this.
Sweetheart, you'll never guess what I got.
Big Mac fries and a shake.
I got a Corvette Stingray.
A Corvette? A Corvette? You bought a Corvette?
Yeah, it's a Mattel Hot Wheels car. See?
Wow!
It's a special price with any food purchase at McDonald's.
The third generation Corvette arrived in 1968 as a revised version of the C2. The new styling was even more radical and streamlined, earning this generation the Shark nickname. Debuting at the height of the horsepower wars, early C3s were offered with enormous engines, with 427 and even 454 cubic inch displacements available. But that fun was short-lived due to the 1970s gas crisis and ever-increasing safety and environmental regulations. Smaller engines, decreased compression ratios, and the restriction of catalytic converters torpedoed power output, with the base C3 bottoming out at just 165 net horsepower in 1975. But if Chevy couldn't make the Corvette faster, they succeeded in improving the touring aspects by adding luxury features, improving sound isolation, and expanding luggage space with the fastback coupe redesign of 1978. This newfound civility helped the Corvette reach unprecedented sales figures, peaking in 1979 at an astonishing 53,807 units, a record that stands to this day. In the end, over 500,000 C3s were sold over its 15-year lifespan, the longest and most popular run of any Corvette generation. Today's example hails from 1974, and it's owned by another Richard. This was his father's car that was ordered new from the factory. It's actually available to rent in Los Angeles on DriveShare, though Richard was an awesome friend and gentleman who let me borrow it for the day free of charge. This Corvette's base 350 cubic inch V8 churns out 195 horsepower, which by this point was measured by the more accurate net standards. Power flows through a 3-speed automatic. The auto option became so popular during the C3's run that the manual disappeared from the options list altogether in the C3's final year. No matter the spec, I've always wanted to drive a C3, and I can't wait to keep an open mind and see what it's all about. Corvette. I am driving with the T-tops off. The C3 Corvette was the very first production car to have T-tops. I love open-air cars. In my opinion, T-tops are the way to go. They keep the structure pretty rigid with the center bar. I know they leak sometimes, but come on, just take care of the little rubber seals. It's a lot less maintenance than a full convertible top, and they're a lot lighter and easier to deal with than a full target top, which will come later. Now, I know these late C3s are considered the black sheep of the Corvette family, but let's find out if that's really the case. Of all the different Corvettes, this is the most ridiculous feeling when you first sit in it. The dashboard is angled towards you at this extreme angle. The speedometer and tachometer are like huge. They're like small dinner plates. You sit really low, like your butt on the ground kind of feeling. And it's so hard to see exactly where the front end of the car is. This is by far the longest feeling hood of any of the Corvettes, but you are greeted by these amazing fender flares on each side. The proportions are so crazy. You got this pinched waist. It's like a caricature of a car. All right, let's try some acceleration. I'm gonna come to a nearly full stop here and floor it. Okay. It ain't fast. That's to be expected. We're still in the 0 to 60 range for around 8 seconds. Keep in mind, I'm also doing this acceleration test at pretty high altitude and a slight incline, so it ain't gonna be quick, but it's a good torture test to see what will actually move. There's not a ton of power, but the power that you do get is very low in the rev range, which is where you kind of want it on a slower canyon road like this. This is one of the last years before they had catalytic converters, so you still get that old car smell, that old car feel, that old car sound. It's still a pretty darn good time. Well, how's she doing on the canyon road? The steering is still a little wandery, but not too bad. Unlike the C2, there's not this big dead zone in the middle. It'll actually do something when you turn it the first few degrees. Okay, this is the corner that is really hard. Okay, here we go. Oh, hold on, baby. There's a lot of, movement going up and down, not as nimble as the other Vettes. The middle of the C3's run gained about 300 to 400 pounds compared to earlier Corvettes, so it does feel a little bit heavy. Woo! The tires are still pretty squishy. They still like to howl, and they are a little bit wider than the C2s, so there's a little bit of grip to play with. This is the first Corvette where I'm looking around the interior and I'm starting to see some chintzy materials here and there. Unfortunately, this is beginning of that trend that would dog the Corvette for many decades of cost cutting when it comes to the interior. The trunk space in this car is still pretty limited. The T-tops take up most of the space back there when you have them behind. You have to kind of put everything in through the interior. It's a little bit of a hassle, but there is this nice luggage rack, which was an option that you can strap stuff to. Okay, let's turn around. Back down the mountain we go. The number one complaint I hear about this car is that the performance is pretty weak. And I have two issues with that. Number one, for its time period, this car was still faster than just about any other American car. In fact, Car and Driver did a top speed test in the 70s. This was number one. It still wasn't like a blistering pace, but this was the fastest American car you could buy at the time. The second problem I have with people saying that these cars are so slow, who in their right mind is taking a stock 50-year-old Corvette and driving like their pants are on fire? No one's doing that. In a weird way, time has been really kind to this car because no one in their right mind is going to use a car like this for anything other than cruising, and that's where this car excels at. The ride is really nice, it corners reasonably well, and it looks so cool. Okay, I'm getting used to this car, so I'm going to try to hustle it around this corner here. Here we go. Okay, a little bit of brake. Oh, there we go. Woo. Steady. Steady as she goes, Captain. Nice. I mean, it's still a really fun car. Is it as special as the C2 or C1? No. It has more of a mass market feel, especially the interior. But what works for it is that because there's so many, assuming you get a later one like this, they're like half to a third of the cost of the C1 or C2. 15 to 20 grand buys you a pretty darn nice one. This is one of the most stress-free classic cars you could own. There's so many parts, there's nothing too high-tech, so it's relatively easy to fix. I mean, this is a car that's been driven. It's got about 126,000 miles on it, and it's driving at very good temperatures, no problem overheating, and yet you get that awesome, swoopy styling. Pop the T-tops off, put some BGs on the stereo, and you're gonna have a good time. C3s need love too, man.
You've never seen anything like this before.
A new Chevrolet Corvette like never before.
Never before.
After a year off in 1983, the long-awaited 4th-gen Corvette arrived in '84, intent to reclaim the world-class performance that it had lost over the past decade. A new, more integrated structure gave the car greater strength and a lower center of gravity. Unfortunately, some rigidity was lost by a last-minute executive decision to replace the T-top design with a fully removable target top. So engineers did what they could last minute to shore up the C4 structure by making the side sills extremely tall, but more on that later. In any case, the C4 did easily out-corner exotic Europeans that were double the Corvette sticker price, and the C4 annihilated its competition in the SCCA showroom stock racing series. The manual transmission made a welcome return to the options list, although 3/4 of all C4s were still sold as automatics. All C4s had 350 cubic inch V8s, but power rose steadily throughout the C4's long run, arriving at 300 net horsepower with the 1992 debut of the LT1. The LT1 could catapult the Corvette from 0 to 60 in 5.4 seconds. Today's 1994 LT1 powered example comes courtesy of my rad friend Matt. This Corvette is like a time capsule straight out of the 90s with only 6,000 miles on the clock. It's been years since I sold my 1996 C4, so I'm thrilled to hop into this nearly new example to see if the C4 is as much fun as I remember. Okay, C4. Finally, my wheelhouse. As someone born in the 80s, this was the Corvette. One of my very first toys was a Micro Machine set that included a yellow C4. The very first car magazine that I ever read had a C4 on the cover. It was the Top Gun issue of Motor Trend. So I have huge nostalgia for these cars, but I'm going to be objective, as always, in this review. Okay, so you forget how quirky the C4 is until you've been away from it a while. I've done whole videos on it. The emergency brake is weird. The gauges are this weird mix of analog and digital. Man, getting in and out, frankly, sucks. Probably the worst part of this car. You gotta haul yourself over this beam, and you can't use the steering wheel because you'll break the pins, and there's this little gap, and not great. But once you're in, extremely comfortable. This particular example has so little miles that everything is still nice and squishy. The steering wheel rim is still squishy. The seats are still squishy. This is like driving a brand new 94 Corvette. Wow. Immediately it feels decades newer, because essentially it was. I mean, the C3's chassis started in 63, went all the way to 82. So this was a big breath of fresh air. Okay, we're gonna try some acceleration run here, and foot to the floor. Oh, yeah. Okay, this is the first Corvette of my little test that actually pins you back in the seat a little bit. It was so fast I have to fix my camera mount. Stay. I'm gonna pull over actually and do this safely. 300 horsepower. Oh, I'm gonna let this cool car go by. Yeah. Now, 300 horsepower in a base engine was a phenomenal number for the day, even filtered through this 4-speed automatic. If you have to have an automatic C4, try to get one 94 and newer, because then you have that electronic control, which is a lot smarter. It seems to know the right gear most of the time. Now, when the C4 first started, its main goal was to be world-class handling at the expense of everything else, but the ride was very, very brittle. They softened the suspension up as time went along. Okay, here's a really tight corner. Let's see how she does. Oh, yeah, like on rails. Wow, the jump up from the C3 is crazy. This really was the first Corvette that really set the standard for low profile, extremely wide tires, and they grip like glue. So my car had the Z51 suspension. It was quite a bit stiffer than this. This one definitely has a little bit of a wallowing motion. That said, it's not a terrible trade-off. Finally, steering, rack and pinion, about time. And while it still isn't as good as like Acura or Porsche products, it's a good step up. The view forward is also nowhere near as intimidating as the C3s, where you felt like there was half a mile of car in front of you. It isn't quite as dramatic though. Overall, the C4 is a little bit more tame, I would say. But I have found that the styling of this car has aged so well. There is no bad angle with the C4. And this color, aqua blue metallic, really is the best color for the C4 in my mind. The other thing with later C4s, they were built a lot better and they're a lot more refined. Earlier ones are like a cacophony of squeaks and rattles, but these later ones did a lot of work with the build quality, kind of quell that racket. Anyone who says that a C4 is like a rattle trap, they haven't driven a later one. Now, I will say, you can sense a little bit of that wiggly frame, and with the top off, I can just tell you from driving my car with the top off on this road, whew, that cowl shake was rough. Speaking of the target top, you have to use this little tool to undo 4 bolts in order to remove the target top. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Okay, we'll turn around up here. Back down the mountain. Okay, I can hear you haters out there. I would never have a late C4 because of the OptiSpark. Every old 80s and 90s sports car is gonna have some major mechanical flaw. It's not like it grenades the engine or something like that. There's a thing on the front of the engine that you have to replace every so often. If that's the one reason why you're saying no to these cars, you're really missing out. And in general, I feel the C4 is one of the easiest Corvettes to work on. It's pretty straightforward. You don't have to deal with torque tube problems like you do in cars after this. The gas tank is right there in the back. It's not a bunch of buried saddle tanks like in later cars. And you have that amazing hood that opens all the way up, and you have great access to the front suspension and engine. By far the most dramatic hood open pose of any of the Corvettes. Also, come on, not just pop-up headlights, tumbling headlights. I mean, that is so neat. The C4 was the Corvette that really went high-tech. It was one of the very first cars to have ABS brakes starting in 1986. It was also one of the first cars to have traction control starting in 1992. It was one of the very first cars with airbags. This one has 2 of them. So you have that safety net there too. It's also the first Corvette where every coupe you could open a proper trunk. This hatchback is so much easier to get stuff in and out of than the C3. The C4 is right there with the C3 as probably the most affordable Corvette that you could buy. In fact, it just squeaked into my fun, reliable cars you can buy for less than $10,000 video. Although realistically, 15 to 20 is gonna buy you like a really nice one like this. Here's another good corner. Power on out. Yeah! So far, all the Corvettes I've driven have felt more like cruisers. This is the first one I really feel like a race car driver. This is a huge step up in performance and responsiveness. And while I know that the C5 has a lot of meaningful improvements, there's just such a great character to the C4 that's hard to beat, especially for the money. It really brought the sport back to the Corvette. And for that, we salute you, C4. Okay, halfway point. As a thank you for sticking around, enjoy this little Corvette horn honk intermission. Well, that was a relaxing break. On to the next Corvette. Thank you.
Does anybody have any idea what this is?
I do.
Well,
It's the next vet.
get me one.
The all-new C5 premiered in 1997 and saw massive improvements in comfort, space, and livability. The new C5 structure was an astounding 4.5 times stiffer than the C4's due to advanced hydroform side rails, a strong central backbone, and stiff floor panel sandwiches of balsa wood and fiberglass. Yummy. For the first time, the transmission was moved to the back of the car. This not only helped balance weight distribution, it also allowed for much greater footroom in the C5 compared to the narrow footwells of the C4. This particular C5 is mine. There's more about it in my introductory video here, but in short, it's a 2003 50th anniversary edition. The 50th was mostly an aesthetic package featuring badging, anniversary red metallic paint, champagne colored wheels, and a special two-tone interior. Underhood is the famous all-aluminum LS1, renowned for its compact size, reliability, and power. LS1s like mine, made after 2001, got little extra juice, netting a total of 350 horsepower. When Road and Track magazine tested a car just like this, 0 to 60 miles per hour arrived in just 4.9 seconds. While I drive my 2003 C5 every day, I am fascinated to see how it compares to the previous 4 generations that are still fresh on my mind. So let's don the period-correct sunglasses and go for a spin. Here we go! Oh man, I love having a stick so much. All my Corvettes have had stick shifts, and this one in the C5 might be my favorite. Longer throws, but nice and easy, and a clutch that's much lighter than what the C4 had. And unlike every C4 except the ZR1, heel and toe downshifting is very easy to do because of the improved pedal placement. It just feels right to be able to rock it out of a turn and upshift, and wonderful. It is a trip jumping from the other Corvettes into my daily driver, and I got some good news and bad news about that. The bad news is that compared to those older Corvettes, which were very charismatic and strange and smelled awesome and made interesting sounds and vibrations, jumping in the C5 is about as exciting as jumping into your mom's Toyota Camry. Yeah. But the good news is, it's as easy to drive as your mom's Toyota Camry. It's probably the only Corvette that you can just hand her the keys without any sort of explanation, and she'll be able to sit down in the car and know exactly what's going on. For better or for worse, they've removed a lot of the C4 quirks, like we now have a normal emergency brake. The gauge cluster is now this no-nonsense, all-analog layout that looks really, really nice. The door sills are much, much lower. That makes getting in and out so much easier. The top is a lot easier to take on and off, and I drive a lot with the top off now, especially because the trunk has nearly doubled in size. I can take the top off and have it stowed back there and still have plenty of room for all the groceries that I would ever need. Corvette trunk size maxed out right here in the C5 Coupe. Bigger than the C6 because the C6 had a bobbed tail to attempt to appease the Europeans who wanted a smaller car. So despite maybe a slight tick down in charisma or that time machine element that the older Corvettes have, it's also a very easy car to just drive every day. All right, here's our little acceleration run. Almost to a stop, and foot flat to the floor. Ah, yes, that feels great. The LS1, such a smooth, powerful engine. I think the exhaust in the C5 sounds a lot better than what we got with the C4, which is relatively muted. Numbers-wise, there's not a huge difference in the performance between a C4 and a C5, but the big difference is how easy it is to drive the C5. With that stiffer frame, it allows the suspension to soak up bumps a lot better instead of deflecting as bad as the C4 did, and this wider wheelbase also contributes to just that extra bit of stability. I mean, I feel like I can go a good 10-15 miles per hour faster in the C5 compared to the C4 just because of that extra confidence boost that I get. While the interior is nice and simple and straightforward, it does have kind of a cheaper, plasticky feeling. Although getting the 50th anniversary package, which has additional leather coverings here and there, and just better colors, that does help a little bit. Really, the only fancy pieces of tech are, well, this is the first Corvette that has a heads-up display. This is the first Corvette with stability control, which is a nice safety net. And you also have these MagRide shocks that debuted with the 50th anniversary model in 2003. And basically the computer can decide on the fly how firm or soft to set the shocks at. Now there's two settings, you have Tour and Sport. Tour is really nice and soft, but without the floatiness that I saw with the C3 and C4. But then when it comes to canyon carving, flip it into Sport mode and it firms it up really nicely. That feeling of the C3 and the C4 where you're sort of sunken in a pit, you don't really get that in the C5. The cowl is much lower, the windshield feels a lot bigger, and they worked on sightlines forward where you could see a lot sooner than you could with the C4. So it's a really, really nice view forward. The fender flares that are kind of swoopy are back, and in general, I love the styling of the C5. It has this simple, clean, unfettered look that's shaped by the wind because this was the second most aerodynamic car you could buy at the time, behind only the Lexus LS400. Granted, I understand, styling is very subjective, and I'd love to hear in the comments if you guys agree with me or disagree with me. Let me know. I'm very curious to hear what you all think. I've had the car now for about a year, And this is sort of like a one-year ownership report. Really the only problem I've had with the car has been the EBCM, the electronic brain that controls the traction control, ABS, stability control. Very well-known issue with these cars. They're not that huge of a deal if you have a 2001 and up model like mine. However, your options with a 2000 and earlier C5 are much more limited and expensive. As it turned out, all I had to do was clean the grounds inside the engine bay, which is another common issue with these cars, and that seemed to fix it. Other than that, the car has been great to me. I've also finally given the car a name, Indy, after its neat little Indianapolis aftermarket sticker, because one of these cars did pace the Indy 500 that year. This is, in a lot of ways, the last truly analog Corvette. This is the last Corvette to have just normal door handles and a normal key. For me personally, because I'm kind of old school, this is the exact right amount of technology. Everything I need, nothing I don't. I still love my C5. Really hoping I don't change my mind after hopping into a C6 or some of these later cars, because right now, I'm very happy with my C5. It's a great car.
The all-new Corvette. The official car of your dreams.
Because the C5 was a bona fide hit in sales and accolades, Chevy's changes to the C6 were more evolutionary than revolutionary. The LS1 expanded into the 6-liter LS2, which now pumped out an even 400 horsepower. This was the engine that I had in my 2007 C6 that I named Elvis. Video link here if you want to learn more about that car. But in 2008, the standard engine was upgraded yet again to the even bigger LS3. When the LS3 was coupled with the 6-speed stick, 0 to 60 arrived in a blistering 4.3 seconds. That's thanks to the improved muscle of the LS3, which delivered 430 horsepower with the standard exhaust, or 436 if you ordered the free-flowing dual-mode exhaust option like this example, which has been customized to stay in the open position for today's drive. This particular car is a 2012 Grand Sport, and it's owned by Larry, a member of the Simi Valley Corvettes Club. The Grand Sport was a popular package that essentially borrowed the Hot Rod Z06's wide body, lower front intake, brakes, and suspension. But it left out the mammoth 7-liter Z06 motor in favor of the standard LS3. This will be my first time driving a Grand Sport, and I can't wait to see how it stacks up to the other C6 versions I've piloted, and of course the previous Corvette generations. C6 Corvette now, and I'm driving with the top off because to me that's a big reason why you might want to get the Grand Sport over the Z06, because the Z06 has got a fixed roof. You need a saw to remove that thing. Let's see how she goes. I'm going to slow down here and go flat to the floor. Yeah! Whoa! That is real speed. I gotta do it again. Yes, that's excellent. There is no slop in this car, I can already tell you. The steering in C6s, the first couple years, like what I had, steering kind of sucked. Felt very overboosted, very numb, but they revised the whole steering system in 2008 for all C6s, and it's a huge improvement. The Grand Sport suspension is definitely a lot stiffer, but it's not teeth rattling by any means, and there is some compliance over bumps, so it doesn't get too upset around really tight corners. It's very flat. And the other thing I love about the C6 is that it still feels like a pretty small car. Even on a really tight road like this, I can very easily place the car. Okay, here's another really tight corner. Dab of brakes. Woo, woo, woo. The scraping sound that you hear is the front splitter. The front splitter is darn low on these cars, and they tend to scrape, everywhere. But I love the looks of the Grand Sport. In fact, I think a lot of people buy the Grand Sport just for the looks, including the owner, and I can't blame them. Then the other half of people who buy the Grand Sport buy it because it's sort of a mid-ground between the base Corvette and the Z06. So I've driven the Z06, and I mean, that thing's just a beast. It is a ball to drive, but this is really all the performance I feel like a sane person could ever use out on a public road. 436 horsepower is plenty of grunt. I mean, even in my 400 horsepower LS2 C6, I was never wanting for power. The LS3 adds a little bit more power, but the real reason why you want the LS3 is just that extra bit of reliability. According to mechanics, engineers, the LS3 was pretty much the very best V8 that Chevrolet ever put in a car as far as reliability, power, even fuel efficiency. Really the only thing you have to worry about is the harmonic balancer needs to be replaced here and there, but that's kind of typical of all LS engines, and that's about the only problem you're ever gonna have to deal with these engines. I also feel like this is one of the last generations where a shade-tree mechanic can actually work on the car. After this point, Corvettes got pretty darn complicated. Now I'm very curious to see how the sport shifting buttons work. This was the very first Corvette with essentially an automated manual. Buttons on front mean up, paddles go down, down, and ooh, around the corner and power out, up, woo, yeah, that's not bad. Third, second, even when you shift down, it rev matches, which is really cool. Look, I'm always gonna prefer a manual, but in the early C6s, like my old 2007 C6, it's kind of bulky feeling. That's another thing they improved upon with the introduction of the LS3, the better shift quality, better steering. So really the C6s that you want, in my opinion, are the 2008 and up. Another improvement that came with later C6s are the seats. The seats in the earlier C6s, like my 2007, were slippery, wide seats that didn't really support you very well. These were designed to be a little bit more grippy to hold you in, especially in the shoulder supports, and they are indeed better. They're still not as good as what I know the C7s can do, but they're an improvement, and they look really cool. All right, let's turn around. There's a lot of attention to detail with the C6 compared to the C5. They're very closely related. In fact, 30% of parts carried straight over, and they just thought about all the little things they could do to make the car just a little bit better. The steering wheel is smaller and feels a lot more sporting in my hands. Even things like the hatchback, it has a power operated feature that grabs it and closes it ever so gently. I miss that. While the interior is still a little bit cheap feeling, the fit and finish of materials is still a good step up from what the C5 had. This is the first Corvette that had side impact airbags. Having map pockets in the doors, that's another random thing that I didn't realize how much I missed. And look at this, actual cup holders that you can use while driving. The C4s, they're more for parking, and good luck if you have a manual. C5, get out of town. C6, actual cup holders, about time. Think of the C6 like the C5 with all the rough edges just sanded down. The only kind of negatives to the C6 is obviously they cost more, and there's a little bit of technological creep coming in. Most C6s have a center screen. Mine had one. This car has an aftermarket one. Well, a lot of people like those screens, and I get it. Because I'm staring at screens all day long with my work as a video editor by trade, I'm either looking at a computer screen or my phone screen, and I love having that break from screens with my C5, which is a little bit more of an analog experience. Also, RIP, pop-up headlights, but at night, these lights, which are pretty high tech for the time, they're like 60% brighter. So if you do a lot of night driving, there's no contest. This car in a long distance trip is as comfortable and quiet as a Lexus. Everything feels just a little bit better screwed together. And that LS3! Woohoo! I don't feel feel intimidated. It just wants to play, and it doesn't feel overwhelming. I don't feel like I'm overwhelmed with too much power or too much electronics or too much driver modes or choice. How the heck can you improve upon the C6? Well, we got 2 more Corvette generations to find out. C7's up to bat.
Stir more than your subconscious. The all-new 2014 Corvette Stingray. Chevrolet.
The all-new C7 Corvette debuted in 2014, and it proved to be the most high-tech Vette yet. The new fully aluminum frame was not only lighter than the C6's, but also 57% stiffer. Open the hood and you'll find an all-new 6.2-liter engine, once again called the LT1. Like the rest of the car, this LT1 is a sophisticated piece, with Corvette's first use of variable valve timing, direct fuel injection, and cylinder deactivation for better gas mileage. Horsepower ticked up to 460 when equipped with the optional performance exhaust like in today's example. This C7 is a 2018 Grand Sport, and the proud owner is my awesome friend Max. Max owns a couple of sweet Vettes, as he also owns the purple C4 seen in my previous C4 versus C5 versus C6 comparison video. Like me, Max is quite passionate about canyon carving, and he frequently pilots both of his Corvettes on long-distance group rallies. On paper, the C7's tech makes it a notable improvement over the C6, but how does it feel out here in the real world? Let's fire it up and find out. The penultimate Corvette, and what some people would consider the last real Corvette, but hey, we'll get to that later. The neat thing about the C7 is I'm getting funky flashbacks to the C4 I never really thought about before. The cockpit that envelops you is back, and then the gauges are this funky combo of analog and digital, just like the C4. Oh, and also the LT1 name returns from the C4, although there's no relation at all to that LT1. Okay, let's do a little acceleration run here. No one's coming, and I'm pretty much stopped. Whoa! Whoa! Okay, hold on, I'm gonna do one where I'm not yelling. It's so fast the car struggles for traction, which is yet to happen in this test. Whoa, okay. For the first time in a Corvette, we have a 7-speed manual. This is the last Corvette with a manual transmission, and it's a really, really nice one. It just feels exactly right. And the pedals you'll find are actually perfectly spaced, where you can do heel and toe downshifting pretty easily. Okay, here's a good turn. Whoa! Oh, whoa, okay. So you think the C6 is quick, and then you get into the C7, and there's literally and figuratively a whole other gear of speed. It is quite a bit quicker. Not only does it have 7 speeds, the other thing it has that's a new feature is rev matching. So on downshifts, it will automatically blip the throttle for you. So you flip these little levers on each side, turns, ooh, it's really kind of freaky if you're not used to it. Like here, I'm gonna go from third to second, and it just does it automatically. Okay, so third, we're down to second. Ooh, it's weird. It's like it's like muscle memory to blip the throttle on a heel and toe downshift. And to me, that's part of what I love about driving a stick. If you really want to, you can turn it off, so you can have it either way. The other bit of high-techery in this car is this is the first Corvette with electrically assisted power steering, not hydraulically. And I'm sure a lot of people will think that's a really bad thing, but they also went through and they stiffened the steering column by like 5 times what the C6 had. So if you didn't tell me it was electric, I don't know if I would know. So to me, it's not really a complaint. Another new thing with the C7 is drive modes. I'm in the sport mode, and basically it changes how the exhaust sounds, how the steering feels, everything that's electronic. And you have an electric diff that senses which side of the car to put more power through. The Grand Sport C7 does have mag ride, so a much improved version of what's in my C5, and it's pretty much perfect. The ride and handling is by far the best yet. It's absolutely no drama. Is it too little drama? That's a good question, actually, because I'm flying along here at a pretty good clip, and it's almost too easy. Man, the speed limit, you're blasting past it before you even realize it. Not that I would ever do such a thing. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. This is like a speed ticket machine. Wow, we're at the top of the mountain already. Okay, let's turn around. One weird thing about the C7 is that because the front tires are so wide, you get a bit of what's called the Ackerman effect. When I'm doing a really tight turn, you'll feel this kind of skipping through the wheel. The C6 did it a little bit. The C7 does it a little bit more. Just something to keep in mind. Okay, back down the mountain. The exhaust sounds so good. This is probably the best sounding bass engine that you can find in a Corvette. And I love how in the rear end you see these 4 big trumpets just sticking out, ready to wail. In my mind, the biggest improvement over the C6 is the interior quality. Real aluminum, leather stitching. This is an attention to detail and craftsmanship that I don't think we've ever seen in the Corvette before. The C6 feels like a good car on its own, but when you hop from the C6 into the C7, suddenly everything just feels perfectly oiled and machined. And while it has more features, it weighs about the same because they put a lot of lightweight exotic materials, even a carbon fiber targa top, which not only helps as far as performance, but also makes it a lot easier to take off and on. Now with the top on, I do have a feeling like I'm in more of a bunker. We have these rear C-pillars for the first time. They do add stiffness, but it does mean you have much more of a blind spot back there, and that big open airy feeling of the old hatchbacks is pretty much gone. Another negative I have with the C7, the styling. It's not terrible, but it's the one I've warmed up to the least. I don't like the big gaping maw. It kind of looks like a catfish gasping for air. There's lots of vents and strakes and things that are there for cooling and aerodynamics, but they don't really make the car look beautiful, at least in the classic sense. This is like the opposite of C3. It's like form follows function. And then you got the taillights. I have yet to get over those taillights. This kind of looks like a Camaro, and it's not even that they're not round, it's that they're not in separate pods. Because those 4 separate pods is a classic Corvette hallmark, and this is a really fast car. You're going to be showing taillights to just about any other car you come across. Don't you want those taillights to be a little bit more distinctive? But of all the C7s I've ever seen, this particular one does look the sharpest to my eye. This Grand Sport wide body look. I love the Grand Sport wheels, even if they are known to be a little delicate. This Heritage Edition stripe kit of red, white, and blue. Man, it just fits this car, doesn't it? The other big negative is more of a philosophical one. It's heroically fast. I feel awesome driving it, but it does make the driving experience perhaps a little bit less rewarding because in the back of my mind, I know the car is the one that's doing a lot of the heroics, not myself. Okay, one more corner. Ooh. Just feet in the power. Jesus criminy. Woo! Man, I mean, this is honestly probably too much car for this road. And I feel like we're at the point where we're at diminishing returns of speed here. Once you get to the C6, that's about as fast as you can use all the available power and performance. I feel like it's a little bit wasted here. In some ways, it is more fun to drive a slow car fast and a fast car slow. The last issue I have with the car, cost. Even a base Stingray is gonna cost you high 20s, low 30s, a big step up from the C6. Nice Grand Sports like this one, you're looking at more like 60 grand. You could get a base C8 brand new off the dealership lot for around that price. They're still new enough where they're depreciating, so that's part of the reason why. But the other big reason why is that this is kind of the end of the line if you're a traditionalist and you want a stick shift Corvette, one with the proper front engine, the proper Corvette shape. If you want the newest and greatest with those classic ingredients, this is it. So I don't think these cars are ever going to depreciate to the point where earlier generations have. This is like Corvette version 1.7. They had so many updates that they got that formula down pat. Whereas the C8 is like Corvette 2.0, a totally different thing. And I can see why some people will never be able to accept that. I'll have to see if I can accept it because C8 is up next.
We follow pizza drivers to make sure the customers get a Pepsi.
Is that legal?
That's a gray area.
Finally, we arrive at the C8, which for the first time in a production Vette, shifted the engine to a position behind the driver. Egads! By placing the heaviest part of the car closer to the rear wheels, traction under acceleration, braking, and cornering improved to even higher levels. While the new engine placement was a revolution, the engine itself was an evolution from the LT1. This revised LT2 saw power bump up once again, now at 495 when equipped with the optional performance exhaust like today's example. This is a 2021 C8 with the Z51 performance package. It's bone stock beyond the chrome wheel coverings added by its owner, Rich, who actually uses his C8 as an awesome daily driver. I was lucky enough to drive a C8 just like this at full track speed for a video I made during the pandemic. But this will be my first time driving a C8 on the street. Now that I'm armed with the insight from driving all the previous generations, I'm super curious how the latest Corvette stacks up. Have arrived at the final Corvette. I really do feel like I'm piloting a fighter jet. Okay, here's a tight corner. Down a second. It's just so much more intense. I'm not used to being this far forward. It's kind of like the psychological effect of being in the back of a roller coaster like you are in other Corvettes, to suddenly you're in the very, very front of the roller coaster with this thing. Now, it does mean that I have very difficult time judging what their rear tires are up to. Where that near 500 horsepower is going to be blasting out, I don't really know what's going on back there. But the sightlines forward are great. Let's do a little acceleration test, okay? Here we go. Oh my God! Okay, that's fast. Okay, let's try that again now that I've rewired my senses. Scary fast, and this is the base model. There has been a huge jump up in performance from the C7 to the C8. 0 to 60 is about a full second faster. This is a sub 3-second car. While there's just a little bit more power with the LT2, really that extra speed comes from the 8-speed dual clutch transmission and that weight balance, which is right over the rear wheels. Jesus wept. That is a fast car. Okay, no more manual transmission, but 8 gears is a lot to keep track of. I don't think my feet and hands could be coordinated enough to keep up with this car. Oh, my heart is going way faster in the other Corvettes, my stomach is feeling a little queasy. It's like painfully fast. Whew. All right, we're gonna turn around up here. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I catch your breath a little bit more. Let's talk about some of the other interesting practical things on this car. The cockpit is definitely even more of a cockpit feeling. The passenger really is in their own little pen over there, and everything's facing the driver. And there's this neat row of buttons. They have recently gotten rid of that row of buttons, but once you get used to them, you can adjust them by feel alone. I don't know, I kind of like them. Now that massive single hatchback is split into two. You have a pretty big size trunk in the rear. That's also where you can store the target top, but it does get kind of warm back there. So you also have this frunk in the front. This is the first Corvette with an axle lift system, which is super handy. And another little cool piece of tech, for the first time you can customize the driver modes in this My Mode system. And it's pretty intuitive, I have to say. However, another philosophical issue I have with newer car is all that choice. What they found in brain studies is that one of the things that taxes the mind the most is decision making. And if you've ever been to the supermarket and you're faced with 100 different laundry detergents, you know what I mean. In some ways it's easier to just have one mode, one simple thing. You're not worried about did I make the right choice in the suspension or the steering? That's part of why the simplicity of an older cars can be really refreshing, even though it is kind of cool to be able to set the car exactly how you want. A lot of people were upset that the new Corvette would be mid-engine, but to me, it just felt kind of inevitable. I mean, how many decades has Chevrolet teased concept car after concept car after concept car that was all mid-engined? I mean, the C7 was supposed to be mid-engine, and the only reason it wasn't was because GM was basically bankrupt and didn't have the money to further develop it. Okay, let's get through this corner, and we're gonna rock it on out. Whoa, that is serious speed. That's the main reason why they went to mid-engine. They had maxed out what the front-engine Corvette could do. Now, styling-wise, it does have more of that generic supercar profile. That said, I have warmed to the design of this car over time. There are all these speed lines going through the car that you don't really notice at first blush. So while I don't think the C8 is the prettiest Corvette, I think when it's standing still, it just looks the fastest. The mid-engine design also was there to make the car a bit more aspirational to a younger audience, and guess what? It works. The average age of new Corvette owners dropped by 7 years with the C8. We haven't seen such strong 50,000 plus sales numbers since the heyday of the C3. I mean, this outsold the Camaro. They clearly hit the bullseye of where they really care about, which is the market. Welcome to Corvette 2.0. It's just a Corvette that's for hyperspace. Woohoo! Ridiculously quick, ridiculously fast. What a ridiculous car! All right, everybody, we've done it. 8 generations of Corvette. Now I gotta think about each generation, how they compare, and which one I think is overall the best Corvette ever made. There's been a lot of good ones, ladies and gentlemen. It's gonna be a very tough decision. All right, conclusion time. Which Corvette generation do I think currently offers the best combo of performance, comfort, style, reliability, and value? Without further ado, I present the 6th generation C6 as my winner. Older Corvettes might be more special, more beautiful, or more analog, and newer Corvettes are faster and more polished. But I think the C6 represents the sweet spot of everything that makes the Corvette great at a reasonable cost. It's roomy and luxurious enough for daily use while still offering up all the speed that most people could actually use. Add in classically attractive Corvette design, and I think you have the generation that the broadest audience will have the most to appreciate, especially if you go with the improved 2008 and later model years of the C6's run. However, I want to give an honorable mention to the C6's close cousin, the C5. In fact, if you're shopping for a Corvette in the 15 to low 20 grand range, where you'll find either a late C5 or an early C6, I'd personally recommend going with the late C5. While the C5 isn't quite as refined or as quick as the C6, the C5 offers a simpler, more natural feeling motoring experience. It's easily the most user-friendly of all the Corvette generations, and it's hard to beat its value. But I still had a blast with each and every one of these Corvettes. There's not a bad one in the bunch, and I think it's amazing that for every taste and budget level, there's probably a Corvette out there for you. Those are my thoughts, and now I'd like to hear yours in the comments below. I read and respond to every comment, and I love to hear what you have to say. And check out the many other Corvette videos that I have here on my channel, including my buyer's guides. A huge thank you to all the owners who donated their time and trust to help me realize this dream video. And thank you for watching, especially all the way to the end of this epic journey. You rock. See you next time.